What began as a routine congressional oversight hearing quickly turned into a tense confrontation over immigration enforcement, asylum law, and the conduct of federal officers. During a House Homeland Security Committee hearing, Representative Dan Goldman of New York repeatedly pressed the Department of Homeland Security Secretary on a question he argued should have been straightforward. Goldman sought a direct answer about whether individuals with pending asylum applications are legally present in the United States and whether deporting them would violate existing law. But as the exchange unfolded, frustration quickly mounted. Goldman accused the secretary of avoiding the question, repeatedly reclaiming his time as the discussion shifted toward broader immigration policies. The confrontation soon expanded beyond asylum law and into allegations regarding immigration enforcement practices, including arrests outside immigration courts, officer identification, and accountability within federal agencies. The result was one of the most contentious moments of the hearing, highlighting the ongoing national debate over immigration enforcement, border security, and the limits of executive authority. Here's the exchange.
Goldman for 5 minutes.
Secretary Noem, let's talk about the law. Do you agree that asylum is a lawful pathway to immigrate to this country? Yes or no?
There's an asylum program, yes, in place.
All right. So immigrants then with ongoing asylum applications are legally in this country, correct?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Your question was?
Immigrants with ongoing asylum applications are legally in this country.
There are individuals in this country that have applications that...
And they are legally here because it's a lawful pathway, right?
It's a lawful pathway.
Okay, so if your department then deports anyone with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law, correct?
Joe Biden left us with...
I'm not asking about Joe Biden. I'm asking you a specific question. If your department deports anyone with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law. Is that correct?
It was greatly violated when they allowed...
I'm asking you.
...people to come
I'm
in
asking
and
you.
granted asylum applications.
Why are you filibustering? Why can't you answer the question? It's a simple question.
Your president...
If your department
and your secretary
deports
did not follow
anyone
the law,
with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law. Isn't that correct?
The asylum program was broken under the last...
Mr. Chairman, I will reclaim my time. She's not answering the question. But the obvious answer is that, yes, if you follow a lawful pathway, asylum is a lawful pathway. If you have an open asylum case, you are here lawfully. But the problem that we are seeing around the country is that you are not following the law. Don't tell us to change the law. If you don't like the asylum system, you change the asylum law. Bring it to us. We'll work with you. I think it needs to be changed. But you can't just decide that you're not going to follow the law, and asylum is a law, and deport people who have ongoing applications. Unfortunately, that is exactly what's happening. It's happening across the street from my office right in New York City. Numerous, thousands of people who have come to court appearances, have left them with open asylum applications, have been arrested. And then they've been shipped off and many deported. In September, one applicant was ripped away from his wife and small children after such a court appearance. And then this happened to his wife. Please play the video. No, it's not. It's not this one. All right, it's not this video. Here it is.
I'm yours. Come on, man.
Now, after this incident, your department issued a statement that said the officer's conduct in this video is unacceptable and beneath the men and women of ICE. Our ICE law enforcement are held to the highest professional standards, and this officer is being relieved of current duties as we conduct a full investigation. 3 days later, you reinstated that officer and you put him back on duty. I sent you a letter and asked you what investigation was done and why was he reinstated. You did not answer that letter. So I'm going to give you an opportunity right here to explain to me that if that officer's conduct was, quote, beneath the men and women of ICE, unquote, why did you reinstate him?
Sir, that investigation was completed. I can give you that investigation and the information that you would like. This is
Well, I wrote you 2 months ago. Why haven't you given it to me yet?
I'm actually surprised that you haven't gotten it. I'm going to ask my staff about that.
Well, you
because
shouldn't
I
be
have
surprised
responded
because generally
to
speaking, you
hundreds
do
and
not
hundreds, if
respond
not
to
thousands
us.
of your letters.
Now, the other problem that we are
Mayorkas, when he had
seeing
this
all
job,
over
didn't
the
respond to
country
letters for years.
is that your officers are wearing masks, are dressed in plain clothes, often going around without identification.
All of our officers are identified.
I'm not asking a question. I introduced the No Secret Police Act to stop this. And we now have 113 co-sponsors so that they will not be masked and that they will identify themselves. Now, you say all of them are identifying themselves. That is not the case because last month in New York City again, the NYPD officers were injured by your masked, plainclothes ICE officers after they were called from 911 as residents witnessed your officers pulling individuals out of their vehicles and chasing them down the street. I also asked you what happened there. How were the NYPD officers injured by your officers? And you didn't respond. What's the answer?
Sir, our individual
Gentlemen's
officers
time
are
is
identified.
time has expired.
From the opening moments of this exchange, it became clear that Representative Dan Goldman was pursuing a very specific objective. Rather than engaging in a broad discussion about immigration policy, border security, or overall enforcement priorities, he attempted to narrow the conversation to a single legal question involving asylum applications and lawful presence in the United States. Goldman's approach reflected a common strategy seen during congressional oversight hearings. Lawmakers often try to reduce a complicated policy dispute into a direct yes or no question. By doing so, they seek either a clear admission, a clear denial, or a moment that highlights a witness's unwillingness to provide a direct answer. In this case, Goldman repeatedly asked whether individuals with ongoing asylum applications are legally present in the country and whether deporting such individuals would violate the law. The Secretary, however, appeared unwilling to answer the question within the narrow framework Goldman established. Instead, she repeatedly shifted the discussion toward broader concerns regarding the immigration system and policies inherited from previous administrations. That response immediately became the source of tension. As viewers watched the exchange unfold, two competing arguments emerged. Goldman argued that the legal status of individuals with pending asylum claims is governed by existing law and that federal officials are obligated to follow those legal procedures regardless of their political views about the asylum system itself. His position was that disagreements with current immigration laws do not grant executive agencies the authority to disregard them. The Secretary's responses suggested a different emphasis. Rather than focusing solely on the legal distinction Goldman was drawing, she repeatedly referenced what she viewed as larger failures within the immigration system. Supporters of that perspective often argue that broader systemic problems cannot be separated from discussions about individual cases because enforcement decisions occur within the context of an immigration system that many officials believe requires reform. That disagreement highlights one of the central tensions in modern immigration debates. Discussions frequently move back and forth between legal questions and policy questions. A lawmaker may focus on whether current laws are being followed, while administration officials may focus on whether those laws are effective or sustainable. As a result, both sides can appear to be discussing different issues even while responding to the same question. The exchange became even more contentious when Goldman accused the Secretary of filibustering rather than answering directly. Congressional hearings often feature these moments because lawmakers typically have limited speaking time. Every minute spent on a broader explanation is a minute not spent answering the specific question being asked. For members seeking direct accountability, such responses can be frustrating. For witnesses, broader explanations may be viewed as necessary context. As the hearing continued, Goldman expanded the discussion beyond asylum law and turned his attention toward immigration enforcement practices. He referenced incidents involving individuals who allegedly appeared at immigration proceedings only to later face detention or deportation actions. His broader argument centered on concerns that enforcement activities may be affecting people who are actively participating in legal immigration processes. Supporters of Goldman's position often argue that confidence in the legal system depends on individuals believing that participation in legal proceedings will be respected and protected. They contend that if people fear detention simply for attending required hearings, trust in the immigration process may erode. Supporters of stronger enforcement policies frequently counter that attendance at immigration proceedings does not automatically resolve questions regarding an individual's legal status, and that immigration authorities retain enforcement responsibilities under existing laws. This ongoing disagreement remains one of the most debated issues in immigration policy today. The hearing then shifted toward another subject that has generated significant public attention in recent years: the conduct of federal immigration officers. Goldman highlighted an incident involving an officer whose actions had previously been described by the department as unacceptable. He questioned why that officer was later returned to duty following an internal review. The exchange reflected a broader debate regarding transparency and accountability within law enforcement agencies. Oversight hearings frequently focus on these types of cases because lawmakers seek explanations for decisions that may appear inconsistent to the public. When agencies announce investigations, members of Congress often expect detailed explanations regarding the findings and any disciplinary outcomes. When those explanations are delayed or unavailable, questions about transparency naturally follow. The Secretary responded by indicating that an investigation had been completed and suggested that information could be provided. Goldman, however, pointed out that he had previously requested information through official correspondence and had not received the answers he was seeking. That moment illustrated another recurring theme in congressional oversight. Lawmakers often become frustrated when information requests remain unanswered for extended periods. Agency officials, meanwhile, frequently cite administrative processes, ongoing reviews, or communication issues as reasons for delays. The result can be a public dispute over accountability that extends far beyond the original policy issue being discussed. The conversation then moved to officer identification and the use of masks during enforcement operations. Goldman argued that officers conducting enforcement actions should clearly identify themselves and avoid practices that could create confusion among members of the public. He referenced proposed legislation intended to address those concerns. Questions surrounding identification have become increasingly controversial in recent years. Supporters of stricter identification requirements argue that transparency strengthens public trust and helps ensure accountability. They contend that citizens should be able to clearly recognize government officials exercising law enforcement authority. Others argue that certain operational circumstances may require additional protections for officers, particularly when enforcement actions involve heightened security concerns or situations where officers may face threats. The balance between transparency, safety, and operational effectiveness remains the subject of ongoing debate. Another notable aspect of the exchange was the contrast in communication styles. Goldman adopted a prosecutorial approach, repeatedly narrowing his questions and seeking concise responses. The Secretary frequently broadened her answers to include larger policy considerations and institutional concerns. Both approaches are common in congressional hearings, but when they collide, the result is often a tense and highly visible confrontation. From a political perspective, moments like these often resonate far beyond the hearing room itself. Members of Congress understand that short exchanges can quickly circulate across social media, news broadcasts, and political commentary programs. As a result, both lawmakers and witnesses frequently speak not only to each other but also to broader audiences watching from outside the room. Supporters of Goldman are likely to view this exchange as an example of a lawmaker aggressively pursuing accountability and demanding direct answers from executive branch officials. They may argue that oversight hearings exist precisely for that purpose and that elected representatives have a responsibility to challenge agencies when questions remain unanswered. Supporters of the administration are likely to see the exchange differently. They may argue that immigration enforcement cannot be reduced to simple sound bites and that broader context is necessary when discussing complex legal and operational issues. From that perspective, the Secretary's responses may be viewed as attempts to address larger concerns that cannot be fully captured through yes or no answers. Ultimately, this hearing reflected a broader national conversation about immigration, executive authority, enforcement priorities, and government accountability. The disagreement was not simply about one question regarding asylum applications. It represented competing views about how immigration laws should be interpreted, enforced, and reformed. By the time the exchange concluded, neither side appeared willing to concede ground. Goldman remained focused on obtaining direct answers regarding legal obligations and enforcement actions. The Secretary remained focused on broader concerns involving immigration policy and operational realities. The result was a sharp and memorable confrontation that underscored how deeply divided the immigration debate remains. Whether viewers agreed with Goldman, agreed with the Secretary, or found faults in both positions, the exchange demonstrated how congressional hearings increasingly serve as public forums where larger political and policy battles play out in real time. And judging by the intensity of this confrontation, those debates are unlikely to fade anytime soon.